If you look at the Seahawks, I mean, you love to be confident in your teams, but I didn't necessarily feel like you were going to go into Kansas City in December with how banged up you are and beat the Chiefs. I mean, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't too big of a blowout. It wasn't like what Russell Wilson had to endure yesterday on Christmas against the Rams. Let's see. The Mariners are quiet. The Storm, quiet as well. The Sounders were busy announcing their 2023 schedule, as well as making 2 selections in the 2023 MLS Super Draft. It's just so funny that they added super to that. Let's see. It just feels unnecessary, but I just had to say that with some of the things that MLS does anyway. The Kraken had an up and down week. There's only 2 games to go over, and so it's tough to say week. The Reign lost a key member of their front office staff, the Seawolves, Sea Dragons, and Sonics. Yeah, I said that. In case you haven't been watching, we added a Sonic segment that we'll get hopefully more info about in the coming months to the show, and then obviously we'll do Star of the Week to finish things off. So with that being said, I can finally turn over to someone and not start out sad. But let's go over that December 24th game against the Chiefs.
Yeah, so if many of you guys were watching, which I'm sure you were on Christmas Eve, our Seattle Seahawks did unfortunately lose to the Kansas City Chiefs, a loss of 10-24, and it just never felt like they figured it out until the end there when we got, luckily, our first and only touchdown. But it was tough, and like you said, you want to have confidence in your team, but Kansas City's at the top of their division and just at the top of the league. So
Yeah.
it was a tough matchup, and I think I actually like the fight that we put up, at least towards the end there. And if I'm being quite honest, I thought that it could have been worse. Not sure what your take was there.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at things, at least in the first half, it felt like you were hanging around because you went into this. The first quarter was 7-0, which is fine. I mean, you look at the halftime score, 17-3 isn't ideal. Third quarter, I think that second quarter kind of blew things away for you. Because if you look at it quarter by quarter, first quarter 7-0, the third quarter nobody scored, and the fourth quarter you both scored 7. I would agree with you on that. See, this is great because we get Bel back. I'm not talking to myself, and Bel knows what she's talking about. If I look at things, second drive was a Kansas City. The first drive, you only let Kansas City go 3 plays. Great. The first 4, punt, touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal. So you were there, but just with how your offense was doing, punt the ball, you turn it over on downs, punt the ball. You have to keep putting that defense out there. Even before this year, that's just something in general. You don't want to do that in anything football, right? You want to keep putting your defense out there. Even in the Legion of Boom days, I didn't want to keep putting a defense out there because you're going to tire them out. You're going to tire them out. But I would agree with you. Just like you said, Kansas City, top of the league, top of their division. They've won their division like 7 years in a row or something.
Yeah.
And, it was so funny because I think we talked about it, when the Tyreek Hill trade happened. But, sorry. A bunch of people have predicted Kansas City have them fall off. Broncos are supposed to be great. The Raiders were going to be in there with Devontae Adams trade. Chargers with Justin Herbert. On paper, everybody looked great.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs are the Chiefs. They're 12-3. They're 6-1 at home. Isaiah Pacheco's been productive for them.
Travis Kelce.
Exactly. That was something I was worried about. I know that we have a poor rush defense. I mean, we gave up 77 yards on the ground, which was fine. But yeah, Travis Kelce started to get going, had a 52-yarder. The one I had picked up Kadarius Toney in fantasy, and he hadn't done anything, and of course against us he scores. They're just the really well-rounded team, and they have been. At least in the rush defense, there was some talk that we got Ken Walker back, which was fine. He had a 100-yard game. We'll get to offensive and defensive players of the game in a second, but I mean, for that first half, it was like dead silent. And he did talk about it. He was like, I wasn't as decisive as I should have been in the first half running the football. There was talk though that this Kansas City run defense, you could exploit that. They've got like a top 10 run defense statistically. And if you just look at some of the guys like Chris Jones in the middle, Nick Bolton played great. He had 17 total tackles, not 7. They've got a good defense too. And I know the Chiefs, when you think about Kansas City, you think about their offense. They're just a well-rounded football team. And, when we get to injury news as well, there's injuries are stacking up. You didn't have Tyler Lockett. And if you look at the third down numbers, your third down was horrible. So it's from that point when this team was 6-3, first in the division, playoff spot seemed like, hey, what is going on? It's tough, because early on Jamal Adams went out, Ryan Neal was out for this game. Let's see, Rashad Penny. It's so wild because we had Ken Walker's had his streak, and you completely kind of forget about Rashad Penny in the streak of this season. D. Eskridge, who knows what's going on with him? I think he's on IR still. So there's a bunch of things in terms of being banged up. But at the end of the day, like you said, Kansas City's just one of the best teams in the league, simply put, and I don't like to think that way because technically if you win your next 2 games and some other stuff happens, you could find a playoff spot, which would be a crazy ending, and you could still have a top 10 pick, let alone top 5. But I'm okay with it. If this is how it ends and you just kind of deal with it, I'd consider this overall like success. Again, you don't want to put, I don't want to raise the white flag right now, but I'm okay with what's happened with this team. Geno Smith, give him a 2 to 3 year deal. I don't want to commit past 3 years. But you look at the rookie class, right, with the offensive tackles on both sides, Kenneth Walker, Tariq Woolen, obviously, Kobe Bryant's been solid. I feel like there's more here, which is incredible, right? Because that's a bunch of starters.
Yeah.
I think this is solid for where we're at with this team. I think you do need to add some stuff defensively. The rush defense being as poor as it has been, and even just some of those guys in pass defense, like Mike Jackson, cool name, sure. I don't know if I want him as a starting corner in 2023. Cody Barton, I don't mean to bad word on him because he's your defensive player of the game, but I don't know if I want him as my other middle linebacker in this 3-4 defense. So again, this is all stuff to look at in the offseason. We still got 2 games to play, and they're 2 important games against the Jets team that has a great defense and fear Mike White or whatever, and the Rams, who seem to have found second life with Baker Mayfield, who has seemed to be rejuvenating his career, which they're going to have to make State Farm ads or whatever in LA, revive that. So it's an interesting place to be in, but just to stop my word vomit, you put it, but Kansas City is just one of the best teams in the league, simply put.
Yeah, I think it was tough just to think about who the matchup was, and then of course to think about what's on the line here for the playoffs. And I actually, as you said, that we have to win the next 2 games, I also just realized that we were wrong. And by we, I'll admit that I was wrong and Pete Carroll was wrong that we would be winning 10 games this season because now that's not achievable anymore. So yeah, it was tough, and you just hope that they can pick it up against the Jets. And like you said, the other chips can fall as they need for them to still make the playoffs and hopefully have Tyler Lockett back for the playoffs. So we'll go on to offensive players of the game here. I went with DK Metcalf, who had 7 catches for 81 yards and an 11.6 average, which, and the way I made sense of this was you're averaging at least a first down. So
yeah.
And then it took so long for our offense just to pick up, and I felt like it was a little too predictable. And Geno needed to pass a lot more in order for it to kind of be surprising and the Chiefs not know where the ball was going every time. So I'll let you move on to your pick here.
I mean, that makes sense. Just looking at it with DK, like, if you look at that, we go back to that photo here. I think that photo was actually the one where he had his second foot out of bounds.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that would have been a great score right there and would have put us on the board pretty early. Maybe you keep yourself in that game more. Unfortunate. I thought he had some good looks. I thought he was productive, so I understand going with DK there. Ken Walker, we talked about it in my little spiel, but it was great to have him back. In the second half, he was running the ball well. He was breaking off a couple. I think he had his long was like 20, 20 yards, 4.1 average is pretty solid. Excuse me. DJ Dallas got some touches, meh. But he continues to be a productive runner of the football. And it's, again, when I look at next year, and I'm not trying to close the door on the 2022 Seahawks. It's just like having foundational pieces that aren't like necessarily, oh, I know I'm only going to have him for so and so, or he's only got a limited ceiling. It's exciting to think about, and I don't want to crown anybody. Like, people are like, with so many guys, I've seen it. Like with Thomas Rawls a few years ago, people were like, he's the next beast mode, and then the dude fizzles out. You don't want to say stuff like that. Like, I'll wait till a dude is established, and then we'll get there. Like with Tariq Woolen, like Baby Sherm, I'm like, let's calm down. Let's have the last thing I want is like a guy to have a great year and then fizzle out. So Ken, in the second half, he said it after the game. He said he was more decisive, and he was. He looked like he was. There were a bunch of times, it was funny, where Seattle would run the football like up the gut or between the tackles, and they'd get great yardage. And I'm like, okay, it's kind of weird. Chris Jones is Chris Jones, one of the best defensive tackles in the league. You think they'd be stopped. Going outside, just nothing. Anything like stretch play or toss, nothing. So it was kind of interesting to see that. But yeah, Ken Walker just continues to be an exciting player to watch, and it'll be great to have him in this offense for years to come. Hopefully, right? No bad things considered.
All right, let's move on to our defensive players of the game here. I went with the guy you just pooped on. I'm just kidding.
I mean, a
Cody
little bit.
Barton. 8 total tackles, 4 solo, 4 assisted. I thought that for how well McKinnon and Pacheco play their role, I thought it was okay, like an okay defensive effort. So it's hard to try to pinpoint good areas where our defense did magnificent. I think that they stayed in the game, but I do think that Cody Barton needs to, if he wants to maintain that position, he needs to get a lot more comfortable in the role. And of course, he has big shoes to fill, but I would like to see more from him too.
And at least with him, it's not like he's like super old and he's just like getting into this role now. So that's not why I feel the way that I do. It's just he's been on this roster for a good amount of time. Like when Bobby Wagner would get hurt before Jordan Brooks was on the team, it was like, okay, Cody Barton steps in. And my frustration is that you've been like, if I look right now. It's like you've been on this roster long enough. Like you've been waiting in the rings. You've learned from Bobby Wagner, who continues to be effective, and he was yesterday. It's like I just hope I would. He's 26, which is pretty solid. He's only been in the league for like 3 years. I just expect a better product. And part of my notes here was like there are too many. The tackling still is really poor with this team.
Yes.
And we're talking about, remind me what week we're in, right? Like this cannot continue to happen. The Seahawks used to put out tackling videos on YouTube about the way that they tackle. They call it like a rugby style tackle, which I had to watch the video again. But since we covered the Seawolves, I'm like, what are we talking about? It's just, and it's not just all on him. Like you've got him here. Whenever we do the notes and whenever I look at the stats for this stuff, he's usually at the top of the list of tackles, which is great, solid. You're around the ball. Maybe I'm looking for more of an it factor. I don't know. He's been productive to an extent. I don't know if I want him and Brooks as the middle linebacker pairing going into next year, where you can go in this offseason and you're going to have a top pick and another pick in the first round, the middle of the first round, and you can add talent. I don't know if I want that. Maybe I want someone else. Maybe that's it. I could be proven wrong. We've all been proven wrong before, but that's just how I feel about Cody Barton. So, and there wasn't necessarily too many standouts from this game defensively. I always look for the stat stuffers. I went with Daryl Taylor, 4 total tackles, 3 solo, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 QB hit. Staying in the sort of front 7 sort of realm, I went with Taylor. He's had on and off weeks this year, and a lot of the younger pass rushers have. Boye Mafe, I think the one time I noticed him this game, he got like a encroachment penalty. I was like, come on, man, you got to make more use of your snaps. You know what I mean? We've come a long way since people got angry at you about his name in the comments from the draft. You know, Daryl Taylor is a guy that what came out of Tennessee his first year. I think he messed up his like femur or something really bad. His leg, couldn't play. There's talent on this D line, but I still think at the end of the day, you're going to need to add more in the offseason.
Yeah.
And whether that be via the draft, I know that some people have talked about Alabama's Will Anderson through like linebacker stuff, or there's the defensive lineman from Georgia, but I've seen some mocks seen him taken second, and we, I think, hold third right now. However that may be, I think you need to add D-line. Like, that's a priority. Or defense in general. I think offense, to an extent, you're pretty good. Like, your tackles are good, maybe a center. Your offensive guards have been okay. But Gabe Jackson's getting up there. Do you get rid of him? And you've had him splitting time with Phil Haynes already. Damian Lewis has been pretty solid, but kind of dropped in production. Maybe you go for the cheaper option, the younger option. I don't know. But I think point being, defense is where I'd like to focus in the offseason. I think your offense is pretty solid. I mean, maybe a third receiver, because is Marquise Goodwin going to come back? Do you bet on Dwayne Eskridge? Please don't bet on Dwayne Eskridge. You know what I mean? So that's I both of those guys we've got here for defensive player of the game, I think pretty solid. But I think that to kind of stick with the general game points, you got to add more defense in the offseason.
Yeah, there's definitely room for improvement. And as you say, game points, we do have some of those here. So I thought the run game was okay or the Seahawks held the run game okay. As I mentioned, McKinnon and Pacheco didn't score the touchdown, any rushing touchdowns. Did Mahomes get one? I think he might have.
That one where he put his hand on the ground and it was a highlight.
Yeah. But otherwise, McKinnon got a passing touchdown. So I think they held the running backs okay. And they did hold Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City to under 300 yards. But of course, being ice cold on offense that doesn't help. I thought going into it with it being so close in the first half and in the first quarter that it might actually be a shootout, like most of the games that Kansas City takes part in. So yeah, could have been better, but now the Seahawks have lost 5 of their last 6 games. So not ideal.
Yeah. I mean, just the first half, couldn't get much going. And I think, that last drive that Seattle got the field goal off of was basically off of penalties that Kansas City committed just being done. Like, there's a hands to face. There's a bunch of other stuff where it's like you took advantage of that. Andy Reid did call it a penalty drive, which it's accurate, but it felt like he started to get going there. But as we talked about in the defensive player of the game stuff, poor tackling just was too present for me. And there was no blocking. I mean, all game, I think Geno Smith went down in the third quarter because he got the wind knocked out of him because he landed on the ball. It just felt like Kansas City was getting pressure. And they've got talent on that D-line, former Seahawk Carlos Dunlap's on that team. But I just felt like the last few games, your offensive line's been playing worse than it should be, So it's just kind of the same stuff we've been hammering. And that's where my frustration gets with this team. It's like, oftentimes with the Seahawks, it's like stuff that's present. And you'd think we're like, okay, we have to get the ball out quicker. and then we don't get the ball out quicker. It's like stuff like that's been present since Russell Wilson, and I don't know how much of that is coaching, how much of it was Russell Wilson, yada yada yada. It's like when you see these adjustments that need to be made, and they're just sitting there like taunting you, it's frustrating. And that's what gets frustrating for me is like with the tackling. Do you need to change the way you tackle? Do you need better personnel there to tackle better? That's where my frustration lies in a lot of the ways with this team, and that's why like even if the Seahawks make the playoffs, I don't feel super confident you're going anywhere. So that's my piece.
And as you mentioned, they are a little beat up right now. So our injury news for that game, wide receiver Tyler Lockett underwent successful surgery and has a chance to return as soon as week 17 against the Jets. That's this coming week. Lockett says the doc says it went perfect. So we hope to see him on the field. I think if you want a chance to win these next two games, you definitely want to see him on the field. And hopefully, that does lead us into the playoffs. But also inactives against the Chiefs were Jay Curran, Wayne Gallman Jr., Tyler Lockett, of course, Al Woods, Davion Nixon, Artie Burns, and Ryan Neal. And then there were some injuries sustained during the game. In the first quarter, Joey Blount was out for the remainder of the game with a knee injury. Pete Carroll did provide an update. It was a kneecap issue. Running back Travis Homer was questionable to return with an ankle injury. He sprained his ankle. In the third quarter, Marquise Goodwin was questionable to return with a wrist injury. Pete Carroll also gave an update and said that he has been nursing a wrist injury and just happened to jam it again. And Abraham Lucas was questionable to return with a thigh injury, which he aggravated. He was questionable to return with a thigh injury, but aggravated an elbow.
Yeah, the Pete Carroll injury updates are always kind of funny. It's like,
wrong body part.
Yeah, maybe I always try to keep track of what the Seahawks PR puts out. And first I saw a thigh. And then when they did the updates, it was like elbow. I was like, okay. I think point being was that they took him out of the game as a precautionary thing, and they didn't want him to mess it up further. So it sucks, but I'm just hoping that isn't something that affects him long term,
Yeah, so that's tough because you go into the game with quite a bit of guys out, and then you also sustain injuries during the game. So just not a good game overall. We'll close the book on that one unless you have something else to say in regards to the game. Okay. We'll move on to some team notes here. There were roster moves that took place within the week. On December 20th, they signed Laquan Treadwell to the active roster, placed Brian Move on injured reserve, added Jared Hewitt to the practice squad. On the 21st, the team waived Tony Jones Jr. and they signed Davion Nixon. On the 24th, the team elevated RB/kick returner Godwin Igwebuike and running back Wayne Gallman Jr. from practice squad. And that about covers our roster moves for the week. Anything notable that you want to point out here?
Well, you talked about the Tony Jones Jr. thing. Kind of sucks that, he got his time in the spotlight against the Rams and now he's gone. But I mean, if you look at, sucks to have Monet on injured reserve, but you look at the 20th and the 21st with adding Gerard Hewitt to the practice squad and Davion Nixon, 2D tackles, right? So, and even there was a thing that showed the workouts Seattle had with different players. There's a lot of D linemen. So it's like they're looking for help. So God, we've been talking Seahawks a long time. We got Pro Bowl stuff to do too.
We do. Like, oh, so let's dive right into that Pro Bowl news. On the 21st, 4 Seahawks were named to the 2022 Pro Bowl games. Our first being QB Geno Smith. It's his first Pro Bowl. Through week 15, Smith leads the NFL in completions percentage with 71.4, ranks second in passer rating, 105.3, fourth in touchdown passes with 26, sixth in completions with 337, and seventh in passing yards with 3,671. Smith's 9 games with a 100 or better passer rating and 9 games with multiple touchdown passes are both league highs. He was named NFC Offensive Player of the Month for October and NFC Offensive Player of the Week in Week 4. And now, for the first time in his 10-year career, he is a Pro Bowler as well. So congratulations to Geno. Of course, we've liked seeing his success, and we hope to see more of it in these next couple of games.
Hopefully.
Tariq Woolen was also named to the Pro Bowl. He makes the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Woolen's 6 interceptions are tied for the most in the NFL and lead all cornerbacks league-wide, and his 13 passes defensed are tied for third most in the league. He recorded an interception in 4 consecutive games from week 3 to week 6, including one he returned 40 yards for a touchdown in the week 4 win in Detroit. Woolen also has 2 fumble recoveries, as well as a blocked field goal that was returned for a touchdown by fellow cornerback Mike Jackson. Woolen was named the NFL's Defensive Rookie of the Month in October and was named NFC Defensive Rookie of the Week for his play in Week 6. Also named to the Pro Bowl was Quandre Diggs for his 3rd Pro Bowl and Jason Myers for his 2nd Pro Bowl. Myers, who was 26 for 27 on field goal attempts this season, included 6 for 6 from 50-plus yards, leads the NFL kickers in field goal percentage, and last week he tied Stephen Hauschka's club record for the most field goals of 50 or more yards in a season. Pro Bowl alternates were also named. We have wide receiver Tyler Lockett, wide receiver DK Metcalf, Jordan Brooks, Uchenna Nwosu, Nick Bellore, and Michael Dixon.
What?
We'll move on to some league news here. On the 21st, NFL legend, former Seahawk Franco Harris passes away at 72 years of age. Sure, that's hopefully not news. He has been in the talks for, I think, all of the games this week where they've at least honored a memory of him. So, unfortunate news. So, yeah, just rest in peace to Franco Harris. On the 22nd, 2 teams checked in on Rob Gronkowski. Gronkowski happened to tweet that he was kind of bored and actually got some traction from it. He had a couple of teams reach out and see if the tight end was still interested in coming back to the league. What do you think? Do we think Rob makes an appearance back?
I think there was something, he did that, and then I think later in the day it was like some sponsorship deal. It's like, okay, Rob, well, and then it's interesting because he did that, and then I read a report that he did contact the Buccaneers about a return, and it was like he's reached out to them 2 times this year, I guess, and I was like, okay, like figure it out, dude. Yeah. And it's like, so you say that, you tweet that thing about being bored, and then there's that news about that. So it's like, you, Tom, figure it out, do whatever you're going to do. But it's just like, well, I guess this is how people felt when Brett Favre did the retire and retire thing. Figure it out. Figure it out.
Let us know. Okay, we'll move on here. The NFL confirms a YouTube TV deal. So the league did announce a multi-year agreement with Google-owned company for exclusive rights to NFL Sunday Ticket. Currently, they are with DirecTV, so a slight change to next season. We will now see it on YouTube TV. On December 23rd, the Cardinals, Murray and Kingsbury drifting apart. Kyler Murray and Cliff Kingsbury are divided on issues and have grown increasingly distant during the season. Of course, the Cardinals are experiencing a losing season right now, so that's probably causing tension, but who knows how deep the issues go there for them. On the 24th, the Jets are likely done with Zach Wilson. New York has lost all confidence in the former number 2 overall pick, expected to part ways with him after the season. Is he playing this weekend?
No, I don't believe so. I think I joked about Mike White in the game segment, but I think that's what they're doing, and I think I also read before that they cleared Mike White medically, that they would find someone else to start, not Zach Wilson. It was like, oof, that's bad. If we had more time to talk about it, I would make fun of Zach Wilson because he made some comments in BYU, but no, it's just kind of funny to see the way that that's taken its turn. You don't hope ill will necessarily, but it's not a good situation right now, and probably going to end up somewhere else.
That's unfortunate for Zach Wilson. We move back to our Seahawks here. They currently hold a record of 7-8. Their standing is second in the NFC West, but they are still considered in the hunt for the playoffs. A couple of things have to happen over the next couple of weeks in order for us to see a playoff spot. The Seahawks win and a Commanders loss in week 17, and a Packers loss in week 16 or 17 automatically puts Seattle back into the number 7 spot. Next game will be on the 1st versus the New York Jets with a 1:05 p.m. start time.
Kind of weird that you have to. Well, I think first things first for them is to win their next 2 games, and it's like take care of that and then worry about the rest. But yeah, it's like this team needs to lose, and this team is like, yeah, just win your next 2 games and go from there.